Teleportation will commence in 5 minutes. Do not leave any luggage unattended. Unattended luggage will be removed and destroyed. Attention, ladies and gentlemen. This is an announcement from Planet X31. Please take your seats. Teleportation will commence in 2 minutes.
Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome to this episode of Science and Cocktails. Science and Cocktails is an initiative with the purpose of bringing first-class scientific information directly to you, Earthlings, without interference of any other type, sort of intermediate media. Its aim is to make the flow of thoughts and the flow of sensorial perception as smooth as the flow of a cocktail mixture. Tonight's teleportation will be guided by Henrik Houthop Lund, professor at the Center for Playware at the Danish Technical University. He is also the world champion of RoboCop Humanoids Freestyle 2002 and has developed many shape-shifting modular robots. His lecture here tonight is about playware, the development of intelligent hardware and software in order to create playful experience.
Ladies and gentlemen, after the words of Henrik Houthop Lund, Nat Skooga, the duo, will play atmospheric sounds in shades of moon blue, chaos yellow and black. The quiet sound of a den that is slowly cracking, while a seagull blankie screams an autumn greeting. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big applause to Henrik Houthop Lund. Clap, 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 clap.
Thank you very much. I think instead of applauding me, because I haven't said anything yet, I think we should give a round of applause to Jay and his team, and please support them by buying some cocktails afterwards. Because I think it's a wonderful thing that they're doing here, and therefore I'm very happy to be here to talk about playware today. I know that many of you have come to hear about what we're doing with Peter Gabriel, and we do for concerts like this with our playware. And I do promise I will come back to that towards the end today, and we will also try to show you something live from what the things are we're doing with Peter Gabriel. But I would like to start somewhere else, because it's not everybody who's so fortunate that they can go to this kind of concerts. Another person that we're working with, many people like him, are a person like Jason here. Jason lives in South Central Tanzania, and he has cerebral palsy, so he has a very difficult life. But the interesting thing is, when we bring him equipment like this kind of playware tiles that you see here on this photo, he suddenly starts enjoying himself. He starts moving around. In this case, he can touch these tiles and they change color. And he particularly likes one color, so he's crawling out there and trying to hit that, and he starts smiling. And essentially what happens is that he's forgetting that he has a difficult life. In those small moments of time, he's forgetting about time and place. He's transferring himself, so to speak, to another state of being where he is in play. And that's of course nice, because we can do this in things in hospitals and help rehabilitating persons like Jason. But unfortunately, living in a country like Tanzania is very difficult, both for him and his family, which means that after a few years, he's not coming back to the children's hospital anymore, because the family does not really want to go much out of the house. They're stigmatized in the society. So what happens is that Jason, he can only play maybe around in the red soil in front of the house in south central Tanzania, or inside on the concrete floor, because the family is not coming out much. So what we need to do is like this, a couple of years later. We need to have a technology that we can bring out to him. It's not enough that we can do this in nice hospital centers, that we can do that here in Copenhagen or in other places, even in the big cities in Tanzania. What we need to do is we need to have technology that we can bring out where they touch people where they are. So what we actually need to do is we need to create a technology that we can bring to anybody, anywhere, anytime. So what we're trying to accomplish is this concept of the Playware ABC, the 3 A's, bringing technology out to anybody, anywhere, anytime. Doing that by building bodies and brains, and I'll come back to that and tell you how we do that. And by doing that, we are facilitating that people can construct, combine, and create. So they become creative with the technology themselves. So what is Playware? Playware is intelligent hardware and software that creates play and playful experiences for users of all ages. So with Playware, we are creating intelligent hardware and software. We take the inspiration from robotic systems. And why robotic systems? Because in robotics, for the last 50, 60 years, we have studied how to create machines that physically interact in the environment. So we are interested in taking that out, that knowledge out, and create physical interactive systems that allow us to create interactions of many different kinds in the physical environment. And if we can create such different interactions, it's of course interesting what these actions are. And that depends on the application area. Of course, if it's football, it's something. If it's rehabilitation, as we saw with Jason before, it's something else, it's crawling around. If it's a grandparent who has a bad knee, then it's something else. But the interesting thing is that through play, we can actually motivate people to do some specific actions. And it's interesting to do this through play, because play is a free and voluntary activity that we do with no other purpose than play itself. So we're not playing for the purpose of, for instance, rehabilitating. We're playing for the sake of play, for the sake of enjoyment. But at the same time, while we are playing, it could be that we are doing those actions that we are looking for in order to, for instance, rehabilitate. So, taking this further, why is it interesting to get people to play? Well, people have been studying play for many hundreds of years, of course. And just to take one example, Vygotsky said back in the 20s and 30s that play creates a zone of proximal development in the child, and more specifically, that in play, the child always behaves beyond his average age, above his daily behavior. So now think about this. Isn't this interesting? If you, when you are doing a particular thing that you want to do, that you can do that even better than you normally do. That you can do it beyond your normal behavior. Whether that's playing football or playing music or studying at the university or whatever. Isn't it interesting if you can do this beyond your average behavior, if you are in play? The thing that Vygotsky says about the zone of proximal development, I think if we think about it, we all kind of know it, that this is the zone of proximal development. If we have a level of challenge and a level of competency out here, if you have high competency and I give you a low task, low-level tasks, then you become bored. If you're very good at mathematics and I tell you, okay, what is 2 plus 3? You say, no. If on the other hand, you have a competency here and I give you a very, very difficult mathematical task, then you become anxious. You become a bit frightened of this. So that's not good either. What I would like to do is, of course, to give you a task which fit directly to your level of competency. Something in here. Or maybe not only fit your level of competency, maybe challenge you 5–10% beyond your capabilities. Because then that's where you start learning. That's where you start expanding yourself, whether we're talking mathematics or physical activity or music playing or whatever it is. It's interesting if we can challenge you just beyond that. And now comes the interesting thing. If we now can make playware, intelligent hardware and software, we can maybe make that adaptive so that it follows you while you're increasing your competency by itself. If this technology can adjust itself to fit to you, and to fit to you, then it's of course interesting if it can start challenging you. And we try to do that by exploiting. Are we on? Oh. Can you hear me? Oh.
Nope.
This off? I think this is fine. Let's see if it's now. It's coming. I just off on. I don't know. But I rebooted. Yes. I think we take a reboot. Not in the bar. So the way we can do this is exploiting this issue of building bodies and brains. And it's not given that that's a thing we want to do, because if we go back in the past, what we have seen is that there has been this dualism between the body and the brain. If we go back to Plato and Aristotle and Descartes, they were thinking that there's one thing is the body, is just a container. And then we have the mind, which is the interesting thing. Actually, we have seen that influencing very much. You wouldn't think that would influence us so many years later. But if we look at the way people have been developing robots, that has been kind of the same way. There's been this split between the body and the brain, between the hardware and the software, between the engineering and the programming, the building and programming. So when people in the past wanted to create intelligent robots, they would typically say, well, the body is just a container, and the interesting thing is this other side, where we can make AI research, we can create fantastic AI in machines, and then afterwards put it into the body. So there's been this split, and we have seen it with things like chess computers and stuff like that. You can imagine all virtual things, so to speak. And then people thought, well, afterwards we can put it into a body and then everything will work fine. But we don't believe that anymore. We have done experiments with animals. Here we have crickets and then robots, which showed us issues on how the body and the brain are coordinated with each other. If we have the right body on our robot, we can simulate the animal brain with very, very few neurons. But if we change the body, if we change the ear structure, we need a much more complex brain. That helped us to understand that we needed to study this more, and therefore it was interesting for us back in the mid-90s to start collaborating with Lego to create the Lego Mindstorms robots, because that had suddenly then allowed us and millions of people to start creating physical bodies, to put sensors on different places and figure out if I have an eye here instead of here, what happens? How is my brain then structured? And that was fine, but still, it was a bit complicated. People needed to build and program and debug and so forth. So for us, next step was to say, no, instead of only having this kind of Lego Mindstorms robots, what we need are true Lego building blocks. So where the processing power is inside each module. So we started to do that to allow us to have a robot defined by many different modules. Together, all these modules create the robot. I'll show you one example here. Here we have many modules, I don't know, 15. But as you can see, these can move on each other. This is a self-reconfigurable robot that we made that can change its physical shape by itself. The robot are all the 15 modules, but when they're put together, they can go from being a snake to a car, for instance. So imagine that the robot itself, by being many modules, they can move around on each other and change functionality and shape, really. Now, that's of course very nice and fine and good, but what happens there is quite typical for the robotics development is that people are striving to create fully autonomous robots. Our idea is that we can create a robot like this that can do anything for us. We just tell the robot, do this, and then it can do 100 different things. But maybe that's not so interesting. Maybe it's more interesting for us to look at how do we interact with these creations. How can we, by helping this here, allow this to create and do whatever it's supposed to do? Imagine that the robot has difficulty if I ask it to clean the kitchen because it doesn't have any cleaning hands. Then maybe it's easier for me to say, okay, I plug in a new cleaning hand on the robot and then it's easy for it to go around and clean. Rather than telling a robot that it should figure out to do everything by itself. Maybe it's easier if I can start clicking in things to that robot, if it is a modular robot. So actually, at the Center for Playware, we are trying to investigate how we can do that, how we can define modules, small modules, and give those to people and allow people to click, 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 put this together to create their own robot that they desire, the functionality that they desire. So examples could be like this. Could create a crawling robot, could create a humanoid torso robot just by click, click, click. And I know it's fine to see videos, but you should never trust videos. So instead Moises is here and he would like to show this Fable robot to you here live. So what it is it's like this up here. There are these different modules that he clicks together, and then he can make it do different things. Essentially, the way he makes it do different things is just plugging in new behaviors. You can imagine a small USB plug, or it could be by any other means. Just first put them together, and then as he's doing now, he's just saying, now I want another kind of behavior, so he's sticking in a new behavior to this, and it's then loading that behavior, and now he can control it in a totally different manner than before. But as you see, just within half a minute, he's doing that. And then you can imagine he can change the shape and do other things. So the important thing here is, thanks a lot, Moises. So the important thing here is that you can just, again, click, 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 and you have a new behavior. So that idea we can take further and put into other modules, like this here. These are other kind of modules, interactive tiles. So say we can take them anywhere. Here to an orphanage in Africa, they take them where they have some space, put them together, and in this case start playing physical games. These games, one is red and one is blue and one is green. The one who first catches 10 of his or her color win the game. And you can see, we can see different cultures, how they do it. In this game here, you see the tiles light up and they count down. If one of them goes to 0, they lose the game. So soon they discover that in order to keep alive in this game, they need to cooperate. Not that they're saying explicitly to each other, we need social play, but it emerges. We make a technology and it mediates a social interaction just by the challenge level in itself. Or they can start building new physical forms, like here. And then we can start observing that they have a different interaction pattern. Here they're more circling around the surface, where before they were much more on the surface. So we can start studying how the creation of different forms allow the kids to create different things, but also how it gives different actions. We can make more cognitive games, like here's a memory game. She has to remember the sequence, like Simon says, while these are still playing this kind of color race game. And interestingly, of course, we can start observing different cultures, how do they interact, but essentially we get the same response anywhere we go with this. So this is an example of how they can physically build. So just by building with modules, they are also creating a functionality. So they're building different structures, and then you get different behaviors out of that. So we make modules that have processing power into them and communication capabilities. You can put them together and you get different responses. Now the interesting thing is, depending on how you build, you may get different structures. Here's a physiotherapist who's playing this game, just trying to catch the color. Now if he changes the physical setup, he keeps the software exactly the same. So he keeps the brain the same, but he changes the body on the middle video. So it's the exact same software, but now he gets a totally different interaction pattern. It's just, he just light him out on a line, and of course he starts getting this kind of behavior from his cardiac patient. Now, he can also take the same and build another body, put it up here on this structure and use it together with a stroke patient. Again, the exact same software, the same brain, but he's changing the body, the physical. See? And in this case, we have, this is a stroke patient, so he's partly paralyzed in the left side. You can see he has to help his left arm up there. But what you see is interesting. He's trying to do that, and he does it as well. And now out here, you see what he's doing now is reaching those extra 5–10%. Not because the therapist is saying, you must do this exercise 1,000 times. No, because he wants to play the game. Exactly where we had this talk about the zone of proximal development. We're challenging him just a little beyond his capabilities, and he wants to do that because he has transferred himself from his normal state of being into a playful state of being where he's forgetting about time and place. He's doing those extra things beyond his average age, beyond his daily behavior. But interestingly, as you can see, by changing the physical body, we get different behaviors. So we actually do see when that physiotherapists are doing that. If they want to train a person for balancing here, they may put up the tiles in a form like this. When the patient is standing, playing like this, he becomes tired in his supporting leg after a while. And the therapist is noticing that, and within seconds she's creating another platform where he can use both legs. So, By that you see what we facilitate there by allowing them to build bodies and brain is indeed that the therapist, she can construct, combine and create new things that matches her need at that particular moment. And exemplified here as well. In this case, when the therapist has a small boy here who's not able to move so much, she can create a smaller platform, and he wants to do those extra 10-15%. And not because it's therapy, but because he wants to play the game. The same with the girl over here. She can move a bit further, as you can see, so the therapist can just put up another platform that matches her level. Just click, 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 matches her level. After a while, she pushes this towards a holding bar here, a parallel walking bar, that she can support herself and now herself try to play the game as things are progressing here. And you see again, she wants to do that. She wants to reach out there even if she cannot, but and now she does it. She does those extra 10% because she wants to play the game. Now, since these things become so modular, we can also start building them into something else. Like in this case, for the FIFA World Cup in South Africa, what we did was we said, okay, we can put this together in new forms. So we can make it into a football game with extra bonus points in bonus rounds, points for how high they hit, how fast they're hitting. And then they get, each minute, they have a minute to play, they get a score. That score we could transfer. What we did competitions between people in South Africa in the city square here in Copenhagen and in Tokyo. So they were playing World Cup games against each other. After a while, maybe in Tokyo, they would score 300 points. They would see that in South Africa, in the township. And then they would say, oh, they have 300 points in Tokyo. Come on, you have to get 310 points. So a simple way to put a level above here where we challenge people even more. And of course, you can think, well, that's fun, and why do we do that? Well, the question is, of course, is play useful and effective? Well, if you look at things like the tiles, is probably the place where we can start to answer that question. We've been doing a number of clinical tests in hospitals to look at, for instance, the different games that we're playing. How much do they challenge people? How much do they get the heart rate up? And that's fine, but maybe the more interesting place to start from is the more qualitative. Then I will return to the quantitative question afterwards. But qualitatively, we get cardiac patients and stroke patients and whoever we say asked to evaluate this, to tell us this. Normally, they tell us these things that, of course, as you know, rehabilitation is not very fun and interesting. Normally, or even fitness training, it's the same. You have to do the same exercise 100 times over and over and over again. That's not much fun. So as they normally say, you need to spice it up somehow, and there, of course, play is interesting. Also the therapist, when we ask the therapist, they normally say that these things are fun and motivational and good and so forth. But it's more interesting probably to return to the more quantitative question of whether there is an effect. So what we did was that we set up an experiment with community dwelling elderly in Copenhagen, average age 83 years old, allowing them to come into elderly centers like this here, meet and play for approximately 1 hour every week. They did that for 9 training sessions, and even if they were playing 1 hour per week, the individual was only playing on average 13 minutes. We did then pre and post test with a standardized test that you normally use to look at mobility, agility, balancing, endurance, and fitness. So what we asked the elderly to do was to come in these kind of scenarios where they would, some of them would sit and relax, 1 or 2 of them would come up and play a game for 2 minutes. Then they would sit down while the other ones were playing. Then 6 or 8 minutes later, they would come up again and play for 2 minutes. So they were playing a number of different games, a game and a pause, a game and a pause, a game and a pause. And the interesting thing is, and I'll not go deep into all these numbers and what they stand for, but the interesting thing is that we get a very high improvement on these tests that are testing for balancing and so forth. What we do get is that there is a statistical significant improvement from playing on the balancing, on the strength, on the mobility, on the agility, and on the endurance. Which is interesting, because this is very short term. These are coming in 9 times and playing. These have a total playing time of approximately 2 hours. Just by playing 2 hours. The elderly, imagine it's your one of your parents. One of your parents. Oh, are we gone again? We're gone. Should I reboot? I think I have.
There's a new battery.
Yeah. Do you have batteries? I reboot, so I'm gonna. Hi. Okay, we're here again. So let's take this case. Balancing is quite important. Imagine your parents. It's so that within 1 year, a third of elderly will have a fall. So that means that either one of your parents or one of your in-laws will actually fall 1 time this year. And if it's your mother, when she's falling, she has the risk of hurting her hip, of course, and breaking her hip, and meaning that she'll not afterwards come out much to socialize because she cannot come out so much and so forth. So it's very important that we actually have some tools that allow us to help the elderly population not to experience those falls. In this case here, we can see that if your mother would then just be playing 2 hours, she will increase, this is the balancing score, she will increase her balancing quite dramatically. And it's interesting because you could then say, well, couldn't I just send her down to the fitness center? That's another training method. Well, we do see, the literature tells us that if you want to have an increment on these scores in just doing fitness strength training, it typically takes a minimum of 25 sessions or about 50 hours of training. And other than that, it only helps you on 1 or 2 of these parameters. namely the strength and maybe some of the endurance. It doesn't help you much on the balancing. Then you can tell her, well, you could do Tai Chi. Tai Chi is fine, it still needs a lot of time to get an effect, and you get some balancing effect, but only on, essentially only on balancing and only on static balancing and not dynamic balancing. And it doesn't help your mother on endurance and mobility and so forth. So this is quite interesting that we can see that play has a very dramatic effect, just by short term. What we did also was to have the elderly play together with the children, which was quite fun, but maybe more than that, what we did, this is another video from, with Rune in a school, but what we did was similar to this in kindergartens, and I'll show you the numbers from kindergartens afterwards. But essentially, bring out the tiles, allow the kids to create different things, start interacting with different games, however they like them. In this case, you can see they're just changing the color, which is maybe not much, but it's enough for the kids to create 100 different kinds of games on top of this. They start making these social interactive games, and they start creating other competitive games, like here, boys against girls, and they may start doing other activities like hopscotch, but guided hopscotch this time. So they blink from where you have to jump to, and if you lose, then you lose. But the interesting thing is, if we go a bit down in age from this video you saw, we did together with Gentofte municipality. When they're screening, so they were going out screening the kids who were 4 years old on their motoric skills and who had motoric problems. And it's actually quite dramatic that when a professional is going out in these kindergartens and looking at the kids, how well are they physically for balancing and jumping around and so forth, she will have a notice on 47% of these kids. So what we do is we allow them to play for, like the elderly, for in this case 12 training sessions, and we have them tested again, and fortunately much less notices on the motoric skills. So it seems like that there is something to this, that with this kind of modular play where you can get an effect, and definitely we do see qualitatively that people are able to use this adaptivity to adjust exercises to treatment area and the activity and patient level and patient fatigue, and it is the modularity that allowed them to do this in an easy fashion. So when we're designing this kind of things, now I just showed you a couple of examples, we do of course come to reflect on this and reflect on what are the main qualities that we need when we are designing things to obtain those kind of results. And I have enlisted some of them here. I'll not go through all of this. But just from the top, of course, we have been looking a bit on motivation and engagement already, and playware tools with behavior, that we're putting intelligent technology into the artifacts, the objects that we're creating. The adaptivity, we did talk about how we could make that physical, but of course we can also do it. Along with that, we can do it in software. So imagine a case like this. On the left, for you, the right side, we have a slow person here. We have a fast person over here. See, the game is simply to hit these as they light up. Now we can make the software adaptive so that it finds the level. You remember this zone of proximal development. So if one is fast on one side and slow on the other side, then the game becomes fast over here and slow over here. As you can see how fast it counts down now over with one guy and how slow it is on the other side. And that's interesting because then we can use that kind of game to go out and test with different user groups and see that age and gender does matter, that some are faster or slower than others when we average over larger populations. And which doesn't really matter here who's who, but more it shows us that we need to make technology which is adaptive. Because people do have different modes of interacting, so we need to hit people with the capability that they have. So we can put this into more complex games, like here, which I'll not go into details, but you can imagine the games being more and more complex and adaptive at the same time. Here, these games are adapting to the individual players, so the levels are different becomes different between the two players in the game. But still, when we test them, they all say that even if a very good person is playing against a very bad person, bad in the game, then they have equal fun when we ask them afterwards. How much fun did you have? Score this from 1 to 10. They answer with the same level, even if you would think the one who was very good would be bored with playing against the very bad one and opposite. Because now it's adapting. Another important feature is immediate feedback. We created this kind of a multi-sensory room for elderly with dementia. So they created different modular objects like these rolling pins and these stacking cylinders, by which you could control the ambient light in the environment. And that very explicit feedback is quite important, as we can see here. So we have the therapist here and the elderly dementia patient here. She's asked to stack, to merge colors into a specific color. Look at when she gets the right response. How she's surprised and everything. The interesting thing is here, now she starts opening up for communication, for social interaction, which is the interesting thing. In the end, the technology is not interesting. We're not doing this to create the technology. We're doing this to create the interaction that we get to get her to open up and start communicating with the therapist. Can we get a volume here? This is another very explicit feedback. Maybe I'll restart. Maybe we have it uncut. Sorry. So yeah, it's device. Here they're shaking out sound. You can hear he's shaking out the sound. This is a very explicit, immediate feedback. So anybody understands immediately that it's their response, it's them who are creating this. So we know that if we can create a very explicit immediate feedback, then we can get people to react. So as a promise to return to this thing, with the explicit feedback we can create in sound, as you saw before. So we went together with Peter Gabriel to start to explore how can we use this concept of construct, combine and create to allow him to create with his music and allow him to transfer his music capabilities out to you, to allow you to create with his music. So, to start, can I get a volume on this? So, to start with, we started creating robo music in the way that people could interact with objects. When they interact with the objects, they are creating part of the music. We started out this quite many years ago together with Funkstar Deluxe to create this kind of concerts. But then we said to each other, we could make other modules that were more clear in the physical construction. Can we get volume on this, please? So in this case, each color is this is a keyboard. Did you hear now the keyboard came on? So, and then we have another cue, could be the vocal, which is coming now, is putting it, which is quite clear, you can hear. Now he has the vocal, this is LOC's vocal that is then putting on. And then you get the vocal, depending on how he turns, then he gets different expression of this. Let me go on, because we can create this in different forms and shape. Now then we try to explore what is the consequence of having this handheld size objects compared to making them enormous objects. And what we do find is if we just simply change the shape, we get different kinds of interaction. In this case, when we make the big ones, we get much more social interaction than when we have the small ones. Maybe it's obvious, but still it's a learning for us. So we took this to the Roskilde Festival and were able to do things like this to allow anybody like you to take these objects. When turning the objects, you would change the music. We went together with some of the bands like Volbeat and like here, and they could, then you can hear when they change. But I'll not go too much into details on that now because time is running a bit. What I will say is then we can take this and put it into an app, because then we can distribute this to you. So when instead of having the physical objects, you now have some virtual objects. Depending on how you put them together you are creating different music you can construct and deconstruct. But I'll show you that with some of the guys in just 2 minutes time. But before rounding off and without going into details on that, you can imagine when we have these kind of modules, we can create them into wearables where we put them on your body. Many different modules like before, click, 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 depending on how you would like your body to behave in a strange way. You can do that. We can put them into interactive playgrounds, starting from the ground, like we saw before, but putting them into real playgrounds where the modules becomes a different kind. So, I think what I want to leave you with today is this thing that in all these cases, what we can is we can create these tools with behavior that allow people to physically interact with these objects. And when they do so, they are being pushed into a play dynamics, and that pushes them into the state of play where they're forgetting about time and place. And that's, as I started out saying, that's very interesting, because there you can normally do more than you would do in your daily life. So we are, as you could see, we're doing that by trying to achieve to create technology for anybody, anywhere, anytime, by building bodies and brains, and this facilitates us to construct, combine, and create. And of course, this work has been work of a lot of different people. Just some are mentioned here, but in the past there have been many more people in this whole project. And I will, before we go to a small live performance, I would say please remember this, if nothing else, that what Bateson said is that play is life itself, a game whose aim is to discover the rules that are always changing and that can never be discovered. But we can try to dig our way in through some of it. With that, I would like to to now show you a bit how we can make this modular items, modular playware items into a sound performance, and some of my playware colleagues will come and try to take in part of this room down here, part of the room up here, and what we'll do is to show you some of these huge modules. So please just give us half a minute to get them in. So what we would like to do now is to show you a bit of the things that we developed together with Peter Gabriel. Of course, we don't have Peter here to perform for us today, so you'll have to do with us. But we have a small piece which was done together with Peter, which Peter made, and then we got it into this cubes. It's a tune, an old tune, but which is very much into the time. You can think of it as a comment to the last decade of greediness and how to accumulate wealth. So here's a small comment on that.
I'm gonna watch you grow away.
Peter Gabriel. Now we want to give you just one other small tune, just to show you the way that we are creating different kind of music for this. So in the time of all these music awards and whatever, we know that Maria is getting a lot of awards. So we're taking one of the songs from our collaboration with her. So. Please. Thank you. So the people here that you have seen playing now, they will be available up in the bar to take questions from you, and they will be happy to do that. We do have another set of equipment, which are the tiles that you saw, and Manas is going to set them up, I think here in front of the stage, so you can come and try those as well. And those who would like to play a bit with the music app, you can also come up here and try that, or ask some of the guys to show it to you. So have a good night. Thanks.